Now we're moving back up here under the power barn, and we're going to continue a little investigation on that low pressure number 6 cylinder. And to start with, we pulled the spark plug out. She passed the not getting smashed the second time test. Pretty happy about that. And obviously from all the clips of how it's been running, it's way too smooth for that cylinder to not be working. But anywho, we got the spark plug moved out. I got my buddy Travis over here. Are you camera shy, Travis?
No.
I know
I just didn't know. I thought you were trying to film past me. So I was like, oh, let me get out of the way.
I know I am. That's why my face isn't on there that often. But anywho, we got our number 6 pulled out, and we got a really neat bore scope tool off of the internet. So we're hopefully here in a minute about to open a box and point a little tiny camera down into the cylinder. I hope it's got a light on it. And then
it does.
And then we're good. That's good. And then we're going to try to get a look at what the inside of our cylinder looks like. Maybe get an idea of if the cylinder walls are damaged or not. I'm hoping she just had some crud stuck in the valves, causing her low compression numbers, but you never know. This is really neat. We get to find out without tearing everything apart just to see.
Separate box.
First, you got to remove your box from the box. I hope there's another box in there.
I don't.
Holy, did we just film an unboxing?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
I believe.
We're unboxers now. Wait, what do they call those YouTubers?
I don't know.
The people that buy shit and open it?
Is it like the reviewers or?
No, yeah, that must be reviewers. Yeah, there is that.
See, little light on there. Bulb in there.
Gonna need that. It's dark in there.
Oh yeah.
Well,
I didn't even think about it. We probably got to charge the thing. Oh shit.
That looks high tech. Oh my goodness.
And look,
and
the
you
camera's
brought it
on.
here?
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to get everything uncoiled and try to get you guys a shot of the screen of the shot.
Oh.
Hey, look, there's a bolt. Where did it go?
Over that. See it?
Oh.
Man, you've had this car longer than me, and I figured it out.
Dude, that is the weirdest thing.
That looks like the piston's back at top.
Oh, it definitely is. Yep. That's the piston, anyhow. Right at top dead center. Yep, well, there is our cylinder walls. And what we're looking for right now is to still see some of the cross-hatching from the machining process. And obviously no big giant scars and scrapes. So far we look good on giant scars and scrapes at least. I'm not sure if I can see the cross-hatching or not. It's a little scraped up, but not like catastrophic failure scraped up. Well, we were in the number 6 back there, and you could see that we did have the up and down scratches on the cylinder wall, but none of them looked very deep. Now we're up here in whatever cylinder that is, 1, 2, 3, I think that's 4, no, 3. It's one of them. It's one of the other cylinders. One of the ones that had much higher compression numbers. And you might be able to see here, this is one of the cylinders that's in excellent shape. And you see the piston has like next to no carbon on the face of it. And the little crosshatch lines all seem to be in place here, all those angular scratches. So that's a good sign for our number 6, because the number 6 cylinder still had all those, it still had all those crosshatch lines. We just had a couple vague little up and downs. So I think we are looking in really good shape over here for that cylinder not having like drastic cylinder wall damage. She's not as clean as the other cylinders, but it doesn't seem to be like physically hurt. There's no chunks in the piston. The scratches in the walls seem to be pretty shallow. So I don't think we've got a lot of major damage on cylinder 6. And cylinder 3 over here just looks pretty. Go on. Outside. You go out. Yep, that way. Good snake. Who's your good snake? Woohoo! Now we're back to work in here on that driver's side power window. And we're making good progress. In my door panel over there, we got our new $100 master light switch deal installed. That was a lot easier than taking the switch apart. You just pop it in and plug in the guys. But after I hooked that up, I held the panel over here, plugged this guy in, turned the key on accessory, and verified that my window regulator is operational. My little tracks move up and down, so I lifted them up from the all the way down position so I could get to the bolt here, 10mm bolt on that guy. Over here you got to take the door speaker out, which is just that little guy, some couple bolts around here. You could probably leave the speaker installed in the guy. It was just stuck on the door really well, so I pulled the speaker off to make sure there wasn't any hidden fasteners. But when you do take it off, you got the little short lengths of wire to unplug. It's probably going to be easier to unplug the speaker, removing it from the plastic thing, and then taking the plastic thing off separate. But after you do that, you can get down in there, and you have good access to get to the, you probably couldn't see it now, but you have good access to get to the other track that moves up and down and tighten its 10mm bolt up. And then I was able to pick the window up and set it back into the guys, the little holdy guys, and snug those down. And from there, all I had to do was the previous owner, for some reason, removed the upper bolts on the regulator, which didn't make any sense, because, you know, take these guys loose, set the window down, you can move the window up and down, you know, like they had it and have the window propped up. Don't understand why they had to remove these bolts, but they were lost, and they also made it where that door rattled really bad from the regulator bouncing up against the thing. Anyway, I found a bolt that works really well on this side. If you find yourself in that predicament, make sure, where's my hand? See right here, that's the top part of the regulator guy you're bolting to. Make sure whatever bolt you use doesn't hang out past the back side of that molding there, so you don't have to worry about it scraping up against your window glass. See, I got lucky on this side. This side I got less lucky. The bolt I tried to run in, she snapped off. But then I got a tech screw that was way too long, stacked a couple nuts on it, and I ran the tech screw through the door panel into that metal in the regulator rail, and she's nice now. Now when you close the door, it doesn't go rattling around right here. That'll be nice. But yeah, now it appears we're all reassembled. The window goes up and down. All I've got to do before I put my plastic cover and the door panel back on is grease these tracks. Get in here, this cable slides up and down along the inside of here, and these plastic doodads slide up and down on this track. And this guy was greased from the factory 20 years ago, so it's time to get some more grease and goop it around where this rides and on the inside of the rail. You're gonna get greasy. Do that here and on the other rail, and what that'll do is ensure that you have the least force possibly required to drag these things up and down the guy. And what'll happen over time when the grease runs out, it'll get harder and harder to drag these things up, and eventually the torque from your window motor will overcome the tensile strength of your cables, and it'll just drag, snap the cable in the regulator, and it's not a good time. But greasing that up will really prolong your regulator life. Yeah. Alright. Fellers, we got updates. One of which being we cleaned the shop up. Ooh, that's good. But here we are after the sea foam treatment. And we did clean up our valve train noise, so that was good. Always nice. However, it's been a little while since I last seen you guys a second ago. And it's been so long we even got another car. She's a Buick. Anyway, after the lifter tap was gone, she was really good for a little while. And after a few more test drives, it didn't take long to notice she had a new noise downstairs below. Which isn't surprising because, you know, previous owners had blown out intake gaskets and just kept dumping the water to her and driving it around for as long as they could until it finally froze with water in it and blew the freeze plug out. That's the only reason they quit driving it. So we can speculate they put a whole bunch of miles on the old motor with water in the oil. And I'm sure the oil was really old to start with. But anyway, we got a set of rod bearings. Just gonna, you know, put those in there real quick. It seems like she's got a knock on like one, maybe two, definitely at least one rods. When you first fire it up, it's real, and then it settles out, and it gets quieter as she gets warmer. But it's definitely got a rod knock, and it would be nice just to throw thicker oil in it and pretend that we didn't hear that, but I don't feel like that's going to work out well for me and the karmas. So, you know, like $50 later, we got a set of rod bearings, and hopefully maybe so. I don't know yet, but I hope I can pull the oil pan off without removifying on the engine like I usually have to do in all my Fords. I had a Cavalier once, and I was able just to pull the oil pan down, so maybe, you know, maybe it'll, I hope so. That'd be cool. But anyway, yep, that's where we are. Other than that, the old Grand Prix here is just about to a finished and wrapped up, ready for my buddy to hit the road and get a tag and all that cool stuff, and he'll be able to come hang out and shit. But yeah, other than that, everything is wrapped up. You know what I mean? We've hit the cooling department and the brakes and the interiors and the electronics, and we got the windows working and a bunch of other stuff I don't remember right now. But yeah, hopefully this will take care of it. Well, I could take one look under here and tell this wasn't going to be a good time. See, I got my oil level sensor unplugged. You gotta have a You gotta have a swoopy guy for that. And anyway, I've got all my bolts out around the edge and up here. This was a real pain to get to because the motor mount runs underneath the end of the oil pan right there. Yeah, so that sucks. Let me... Yeah, so that sucks. You can jack the car up, take the passenger side wheel off, and you can get in there and get the other 4 or 5 bolts that are underneath that mount. Yeah, right there. The guys that are underneath that mount, you can get those out, but it doesn't really get you anywhere. Because here we are. We can come down this far. And then there's no room to get around that mount, and it also seems like the oil pickup guy, something or another, the pan needs to come down a certain way to get it out. So that's nice. That means we need to put a few bolts back in this pan. Means we need to get up in here and take the bolts out of that motor mount and put the engine hoist on the side of the motor and lift her way up in the air and take it loose from that guy, and maybe then we'll have enough clearance to take the pan off. Alright, it sounds like a horrible time. And the best part is, I need a 15mm wrench to do anything with that. There's 3 bolts on the other side, they're even harder to get to. But yeah, I guess I'm going to the store for a wrench or 2. Alright, moving forward with our oil pan removal, I had to come up here and take my serpentine belt loose, and then back down here. I could get to one of the bolts on our motor mount here on the front side, but not the other one, so I had to take the AC compressor. He's got 3 bolts mounting him up. I had to take him loose. And over here I had to pop, not that you can see anything whatsoever, but I had to take the oil filter housing out of the way on this side, and then I could access all 3 of those guys. I could get to one from underneath, but the other guy, there's just not a direct enough path to get to these 2. So you just, remove the AC compressor and the oil filter housing, and then you can take the motor mounts loose, and yeah. So I've come in here, I cracked them all loose with a wrench. Don't remove any of those guys yet. That bracket's still holding your engine up right now. Anyway, now that I've got all that stuff out of the way and I got those bolts loose, I can come over here and roll the engine hoist cherry picker guy up underneath. And we're going to need to remove the little torquelizer guys again, and we're going to need to hook a chain from like here to one of my brackets back here and support this side of the motor, because we're going to need to lift up on that side and get it out of that bracket mount down there, the motor mount. And here we are with our lifty setup. I got my chain across that front torquelizer guy mount, and we've got the original lifting tab back there off the exhaust manifold. And now we can crank up on it just a little bit because we want to support the engine weight. Then we can go back down from that passenger wheel well and remove all 5 of our engine mount bolts. Then we should be able to jack it up high enough. We're gonna have to keep an eye on our wiring harness down here and my AC compressor that's laying to the side, to make sure we don't start dragging those things up in the air. But after we get all those bolts out and we lift that motor up, then we can very carefully take the pan off and we'll set the motor back down and put the bolts back in, at least most of them back in that motor mount. That way we can pull the cherry picker guy out of the way and get back underneath the car and start working in our new rod bearings. We could just crawl under there with the engine hoist in place, but it's going to be a lot safer to set that motor back down and bolt it in place before I get underneath it. It's only the difference between losing a hand and not. You know what I mean? And obviously I use it a lot, you know what I mean? We got to keep both of those. I swapped out to a beefier chain here. That little guy I had, the link started stretching. And we don't want to hang out underneath that. Now down here, I removed that motor mount entirely. I had the 5 bolts, 3 here and 2 there, and then I just had to take 2 nuts off through the subframe guy right here and get it out of all the dirt and oil and gunk, and then it lifted right up. And then I noticed something. Went to pull the pan down, and that sensor doodad guy, what sticks out of the middle of the pan, she's definitely in the way of the pan coming down past that oil pickup tube, which would make me wonder, is that the only reason we couldn't get the pan down before, and maybe we didn't need to lift the engine up in the air and take the motor mount out in 6, 7, 8 hours? So, good thing I got a Buick over there in the yard. Another 3800 car. I'll be keeping that in mind when I'm getting the oil pan off of that one. We'll have to find out. Yeah, but you definitely got to pop that sensor out. Then you can get the pan down. Maybe even without doing all this work. I don't know. Well, never mind on that guy being in the way. I just wiggled the pan toward the front of the car and it slipped right past it. Yeah, that's good. Alright. Now after all that, and it does seem like as much as I wiggled it around, probably not able to do that with the motor in place, especially since 11 different guys on the internet said so. But this guy was like your little windage tray gasket all in one, and that's going to be up in the way when you do get the pan down. And to get it off very oily, you're going to need to get your pickup screen down, and it's 2 8mm bolts in that guy, and he sticks on there really good. And now we'll get crawled up under there. Oh, look at it. Yay. This is the process. And there she is. That's my rod bearings I've been trying to get to. So now that I'm down this far, there's one good thing I immediately noticed. None of the bearings seem to be completely shot out and gray matter all over the place next to one. So at least she's not knocking too hard. So now we're going to come over here and pull the bolts out one rod at a time. I'll take my cap down. One of the halves of my bearing will be in the cap and the other half will be up there on the rod end. So I'll have to push the piston up slightly and then get in there very carefully with a screwdriver or whatnot and try to push the other half of rod bearing, like slide it around the crank, and then I can pull it off. And then put the other one in the same as reverse. Yeah. 6th time. Alright. I got my first rod. I think that's number 6 over there. I've got that cap off. And that's my old rod bearings right there. These two don't look very bad. Don't believe this is the one that's knocking on me. But anyway, now I'm getting my new bearings laid up. We're going to put some of this engine assembly lube on it. And we're just going to take that guy, after I put the lube on it, pop it up onto that journal on the crank, and then spin it around to where it's lined up with the rod, and then try to pull the rod back down or pop it into place on the rod. And then the other half is much easier to pop into the bearing cap there. And when you're taking these off and putting them back on, all these notches here, that little raised hump, they all face the same direction up here, so you don't get your cap backwards. And I'm going one at a time so I don't end up mixing a cap up. Alright, now I've got this rod bearing tightened back down. This rod cap. These two bolts torqued down to 20 foot-pounds plus 50 degrees. So what that means is when you bring your wrench over and you click on 20 foot-pounds, you need to turn it another 50 degrees, and a quarter of a turn on this guy from here to there is 90. So 50 is a little bit past half of a 90. Yeah, and now that I have that back on, I can see that this guy is nice and snug on here again. It's not wobbling around. My other rods, you may be able to see, they have just a little bit of movement. Almost none. I think that might be my knocking noise, maybe across all six. But now that the new bearings are in this guy and he's torqued down, it's really snug and not wiggling around. So hopefully 6, 18, 57 hours from now, she won't be knocking anymore. That would be good. Also, when you're putting your new rod bearings in, and when you pull the old ones out, you'll notice there's a little tabby right there on the end of each bearing. Here on the cap, see, he lines up with one of those holes there. Easy. And up here, it's the same situation on the end of your rod. He also has two little notches, and there's no notches on the other side of the rod. So you got to make sure you put your bearing in the right way. Especially if you're doing it with the rods in the car like this, you need to make sure she's opposite to what it needs to be when you set it on the crank here and spin it around. That way it'll be where it needs to go when you spin it to the top side. Alright. Got my rod bearing caps all sorted and torqued back down. And now we're moving forward with putting the other stuff back together. We're really close to things. Sorry about that. There's the pickup screen. But yep, now it was time to come in here and put this guy back in place, our gasket, whatever this other part of it is. And don't forget, fellers, put this guy back in, or you're gonna blow it up really quick. And I got some RTVs on that and got that guy torqued back down. Yeah. I also put a bolt in two opposite corners on this guy to hold it in place while I dealt with the screen. Yep. Almost time to put the pan on now. Alright, fellers. We have got the oil pan back in and torqued down to 10.5 of the foot-pounds. Ooh. That was a really big drawn-out process. Wouldn't be near as hard the second time, though, being all familiar. And a lot of the extra time on this car is just, yeah, cleaning the places that you can get to when you take things apart further. Whoop. So now our subframe's looking a lot better. Got our oil pan back on and our motor mount back in. And that really was not too bad when you pick the engine straight up in the air. Setting it back in the motor mount's pretty easy. What I did when it came to setting it back in the mount is I didn't lift the engine up so high that when I put the mount in, they weren't like, the mount cups around the front of the motor. I made sure the motor was low enough that the mount cupped around the front of it, and then I got the mount in place in the subframe, and then when I went to lowering on the engine stand, she was already in there, and it just, much easier than if I had it up high enough to be above the mount. And also, when it comes to putting that oil pan back on, make sure you got the motor up in the air and you really take your time. Feel around on the inside of the pan where that sensor is. I'm pretty sure she's in low oil level sensor on account of it has a little guy that bobbles on top of liquid. But yeah, it's a really tight fit getting that around the pickup screen for the oil pump. So make sure you really take your time on that. What I had to do was I got everything ready under the car, I lifted the motor, I stuck the pan in place, I got all frustrated, couldn't get it in there, and the trick was to come out from under the car and come over here. And then from over here, I could work the oil pan and I could see where the guy was hitting the pickup screen. And then I could reach in here and like work it around, and then the pan just went right on nice and easy. Yeah, I bet after a while you'd be able just to put it on and off no problem because you're all familiarized. But for the first couple times, definitely get out from under the car and come up here and look in that way. Or you're gonna break your oil level sensor guy off. Now I've got my AC compressor mounted back up into place. He's got the 2 bolts in the front and the 1 in the back. And I think it was 74 foot-pounds and 23 foot-pounds. 74 in the... Now before I go putting my serpentine belt back on, that's going to put that belt right across these pulleys right in my way. We're going to move back over here. Oil filter housing guy mounts up. Oil filter housing adapter. Something or another. He makes it where the oil filter can bolt to these funny looking little ports here. We're going to get in here and clean all this surface up really well. But after we clean that surface up, then we can mount our oil filter housing / adapter, whatever this guy is called. Look at his weird swoop-de-swoop passages. All that to get oil to 2 different holes. And he's going back together with a new gasket. Got a part number 7644 if you need that feller. And I would definitely recommend y'all clean this surface, or at least get the old gasket all peeled off before you put your engine mount back on. Gives you a lot more room to get in here with the scraper and work that old gasket off. These old GM gaskets really just stick to the surface like I ain't used to. But yeah, moving on. Bolted back in and torqued down. I think he was like 10 or 11 foot-pounds plus the degrees. And we cleaned all our oil and stuff out of our connector here. So that's bound to make better on the connections. Ooh, almost. And now we're ready for our oil filter and the serpentine belt. Hey. All right. She's back on the ground and filled up with oil. That means it's about that time, isn't it? The moment of truth. One of the various moments of truth. Big money, no whammy on the ignition key. Big money, no whammy on the rod department. If you don't mind. Alright, and to start with, I'm going to hold the throttle all the way to the floor while I'm cranking on it. That way it won't fire the fuel injectors, and we can spin the motor over a little bit and build oil pressure before we fire on our new bearings. she's not quite as quiet as I would like it to be. It's still a little rattly up top. I think I've got some valve train noise, rocker arm clatter going on. But the thumpy thump noises that we were hearing from down low aren't there anymore. So I'm happy about that. Before, when we started it up, you'd hear like a knock, 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 and come up, and then it would kind of get quieter. And that's not there anymore. Now all I hear is the up top ticky clinking around noises. So, take an improvement where you can get one. But anyway, that about wraps up this video. She's getting pretty long again, like they do when we work on the GMs. But anyway, we'll go ahead and bring this one to a close. And I don't even know what we'll do in the next video. We might even be done with it. I'm gonna drive it around a bunch, see if I can limber up some of the clattery noises under the hood. And everything else on the car is pretty well wrapped up and done. So if I don't have another Pontiac Grand Prix revival video, then she's sold and we're all done with it. But if I do, something else broke. Anyway, thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Have a good one. Keep working on shit, even when it keeps breaking, over and over and over again. Don't stop, just keep working on it. Eventually it'll be good.